Today, Hindu goddesses are recognizable the world over. The goddess Kali, for example, inspired the Rolling Stones' famous mouth logo, and generations of films and TV shows have explored the mythology of Parvati and Durga. Millions of pilgrims visit sites associated with them. But in the Deccan, 1,000 years ago, the community of goddesses was much more diverse. Jain divinities like Jala Malini, she who is garlanded with flames, were worshipped by monks and kings, propitiated with elaborate rituals, and held sway in great temples. This is their story. I'm Anirudh Kanisetti, historian author of Lords of the Deccan. Welcome to Thinking Medieval, where every week we tell you something surprising about the people that came before you and I. Jainism today is most associated with Tirthankaras, legendary ascetics believed to have conquered the senses, who purged themselves of negative karma and achieved the ultimate liberation. But it's not entirely focused on just liberation alone. As theology professor Ole Kvarnstrom writes in his paper Stability and Adaptation, a Jain strategy for survival and growth, medieval Jains conceived of divinities as operating in different levels or worlds. Goddesses like Jala Malini and Padmāvati occupied the middle world and underworld respectively and were subject to the laws of karma just like mortals. Tirthankaras were entirely liberated and resided at the top of the universe. They helped with transcendental goals like liberation achieved through austerities, but goddesses helped out with more mundane matters. Jain communities may have venerated such deities from quite early in their history. As Jainism expert Robert Zydenbos writes in The Jaina Goddess Padmāvati in Karnataka, texts from the last centuries BCE claim that Mahavira, the founder of the religion, avoided Vedic sacrificial grounds, and he instead preferred to reside in the forest glades of yakshas and yakshis, male and female nature spirits. These were popular independent deities in ancient India, and all the major religious traditions, Hindu, Buddhist and Jain, tried to appropriate them. In South Indian Jainism, many centuries later, the term Yakshi became interchangeable with goddess. In South Karnataka, it even became a popular name for women. Historian R.N. Nandi notes in Religious Institutions and Cults in the Deccan that medieval inscriptions mention ladies called Yakki Sundari, beautiful like a Yakshi. Over centuries, religious ideas flowed between non-literate communities and the literati of monasteries and courts across religious and linguistic boundaries. It's important to remember that though we call these goddesses Hindu or Jain, the distinction might not have been as clear to medieval worshippers. Some goddesses might even have been independent, even if Jains claimed that they were the attendants of this or that Tirthankara. Here's an example of a local goddess being transformed by Jain masters. In the late 8th or early 9th century CE, the Jain guru Helacharya developed the scriptures of the fierce Jala Malini. One of his disciples recorded this story discussed by historian John Cort in medieval Jaina goddess traditions. Helacharya, we are told, was a tantric practitioner, and one of his female initiates was possessed by a demon. He climbed a hill where an ancient local fire goddess lived and received a powerful mantra from her. She drove out the demon, and her mantra served as the basis for Helacharya's new tantric Jain cult. That's how a local fire goddess was elevated to the royal Jala Malini. Jain Tantra was perfect for devotees' worldly needs. Masters could use magical diagrams called yantras to cure disease and interrupt black magic. They could gain control over the enemies or put them to sleep by repeating mantras, turn invisible using talismans, drive people insane, and even attract women. Nandi discusses a recipe for this from a Jala Malini text. Cloves, saffron, cardamom, red arsenic, white lotus, sandalwood, basil, and other ingredients were to be ground by a girl's hands, mixed with cold water and applied to the practitioner's forehead. Another text dedicated to a fierce form of the Jain goddess Padmāvati even provides recipes for aphrodisiacs and advises men to tie to their waist the right thigh bone of a cat, supposedly to help them last longer in bed. Goddesses were beautiful, powerful, and frightening, and so they often received the attention of political figures. No less than 3 important Deccan kingdoms claimed that Jain goddesses were involved in their founding. The Gangas around present-day Bengaluru and Mysuru claimed from the 8th century onwards that their distant ancestors' preceptor was a Jain guru who summoned the goddess Padmāvati and received from her a magical sword. In the same region, the 11th century Hoysala dynasty, best known for their spectacular Shiva and Vishnu temples, claimed that Padmāvati took the form of a tiger and pounced on their founder, a hero called Sala. Sala's Jain guru yelled, "Smite Sala, poi Sala," which he did in a single blow. The tiger's form fell away, and Padmāvati, pleased with the hero's spunk, granted him kingship. Padmāvati worship then moved west, and she was claimed in the 9th century by the Santara dynasty of the Western Ghats around present-day Shivamogga in Karnataka. Forced to flee Mathura by a jealous stepmother, the dynasty's legendary founder Jinadatta was believed to have picked up a golden idol of Padmāvati and arrived with her in the Ghats. The hill people there accepted him as a king. Padmāvati instructed Jinadatta to touch iron bars to her image, transforming them into gold. So the king became prosperous, and one day he was gifted 2 pearls by a fisherman. He gave the larger one to his queen and the smaller one to Padmāvati. As you can imagine, this annoyed the goddess quite a lot and turned her gold idol into stone and seized its magical properties. As Zydenbos notes, all of these traditions reveal personalities. Quote, stories about Padmāvati tend to be magical, not straightforward, with an unexpected twist. And Jala Malini's legends, in contrast, depict her as ferocious and straightforward. She often helps out Jain monks in their attempts to outdo their rivals, usually Shaivites. Another goddess, Ambika, is maternal, and she's a protector of children and kings. Yes, Jainism's exemplars are renouncers, but the religion is so much more than that. The anxieties and ambitions of medieval Deccan people survive not in the great ascetic figures, but in the humbler, vivacious female goddesses. They aren't as exalted as the saintly men, perhaps, but closer to hearts and homes. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. And you can find me on Instagram at Anirudh and Connected Histories, and on Twitter at Kanisetti. We'll see you next week.